Hi, Joe.
What's going on today?
Well, today is what's going on is really happening right here.
I dig it. I dig it. Well, man, I'm looking forward to getting in live at the Blue Llama and your life and music. So thank you for taking a minute out.
Yes, it's my pleasure.
Where are you located on the planet?
I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Well, I'm in Kansas City in one of the jazz cradles. So yeah, man, it's great to meet you. And I want to get into this live album. But first, 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging, knocked all of the itineraries out for the jazz musicians in the world, just did all kinds of things. So ultimately, living through that time period, how did that influence either you doing this album or everything that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so what happened for the pandemic? Um, for the first 2 months of the pandemic, I was home alone here at my house in Ann Arbor. My wife was in Colorado taking care of our granddaughter. So what I did is I just went immediately into getting all of my students over to FaceTime private lessons. So that was very good for me. And then what I did is I decided I wanted to be connected with people who enjoy jazz and listen to my music. So every week I would pick out one or two songs that I would record here at my house with backing tracks, and I send them out on Facebook, and that got a wonderful response from people, and it helped me feel more connected, and it helped other people because I would send them like, "What's your favorite song?" or so forth. And so that really helped me. So uh, eventually, I started getting some gigs outdoors. I lost all of my gigs.
Yeah.
And what it did for me is it helped me see the importance of live music for people, how it helps them. I sometimes call ourselves, musicians, we're ambassadors of hope.
Yeah.
Wherever we go, we play music and it makes people feel good. Whatever, if they're listening or dancing, it makes the musicians feel good because of that exchange. So that after getting through that, I decided, I was even more committed and locked into teaching and performing. And so what I did is that when I play at this jazz club in Ann Arbor called the Blue Llama,
Yeah.
which is just a beautiful, one of the best jazz clubs really I've ever played in. I've played in a lot of them. It's just designed so well for sound and a beautiful design, food. They put it all together. So I thought, okay, what's this all about, really? It's about live music. So when I found out that they would record me live, they don't charge me anything.
Wow.
So I can afford to do it from first place. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a live recording with a high quality of sound, which they have wonderful equipment there, and then release it to the public. And it's been doing very well on National Public Radio right now.
Yeah. I love it. It's a great album. So, how did this journey into the jazz begin for you? Take me back to your beginnings. How did music and jazz evolve into your career?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was in Ann Arbor. I didn't play any instruments at the time. I was going to University of Michigan. Okay, I guess I was a junior at that time, and I've always loved music as a listener. But one day I came home, and there was this woman in the back of a pickup truck with a guitar player friend, and she was playing her flute, and I just stood there, and I was just sort of like transfixed by the sound of it. So when they got done with their song, I said, "Wow, I really love the flute." So she handed me the flute, showing me how to put my fingers on it, and I played notes out of it. And she says, "Wow, you might be a natural." So then, to make a long story short, shortly after that, I was out in Colorado at a time when it was okay to hitchhike. And I was out on a road, waiting for the next car to come up outside of uh, the some resort town. I forget, it begins with A, but uh, anyway, I hear this flute echoing down into the like where I was. Somebody was playing a flute up there, and it's sort of like for me, it was like an epiphany. It was like, okay, I get it. So what I did is I just hopped on the next bus to Ann Arbor, didn't even go home, bought a flute, found this woman who lived down the street, got a few lessons, and I was on my way. And so I just kind of immediately went into improvising.
Yeah.
I would memorize everything. I couldn't read music, but I found that I had an ear for music. So
Yeah.
I didn't know until I tried. So, a friend of mine says, you should check out jazz. So he said, well, who should I listen to? He said, well, you're playing flute. How about Yusef Lateef? So I went over to Yusef Lateef and I found my mentor, so to speak, as far as my hero. He played saxophone and flute and so forth from Detroit.
Yeah. So, what was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away? Or what was the moment that you knew you wanted to be on stage and this was going to be your life?
Yeah, what I would do is, as I started getting into jazz as a listener, and somewhat as a player, I started going down to this place in Ann Arbor after hours called the Blind Pig, and I would listen to jazz there. So that was my first influence, listening to live jazz at the Blind Pig at about 11 p.m. at night or 12 midnight, catching the last set. And so there were a couple of players in town. One I remember, his name was Andrew Drellis, and he played sax and flute and clarinet. And I thought, I want to be like him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's the Detroit scene like? What is it like up there?
Yeah, the Detroit has always been a very lively music center in all forms of music. Um, so I found quickly that there was a vital jazz scene in Detroit. And so what I started to do is I started to go to jam sessions. They had a place in downtown Detroit called Bert's Place. And I would go there with Ali Mohammed on bass. Shooby Doo was down there. I met him. Leonard King on drums. These are all well-known jazz people through the years. And so I found there was a vibrant scene for jazz, especially. And also what happened, I started playing with R&B bands and as a saxophonist and a keyboardist. And I joined this band called Domino that was four black singers up front, backed up by four white musicians, hence the name Domino. And we became very popular playing in the clubs for dance. And so that was my experience with being with a very popular band. So at that point, I was just hooked. You know what I mean? Baker's Keyboard Lounge, the oldest jazz club in the world. I played at, still there in Detroit. We got a really nice club called the Dirty Dog Jazz Cafe near Detroit and Grosse Pointe. Blue Llama, of course. Early on, I played at jazz clubs in Ann Arbor. There were two of them. The first one was called the Bird of Paradise. It's no longer there, but I kind of got my start playing there. Also, a place Sunday jazz called the Del Rio,
Yeah.
and then later on the Firefly Club. So I was just in the right place.
Yeah.
Really, I felt like I was in the right place.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. What do you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day to create, perform, educate, all these facets of who you are?
Yeah, so that, what you just said is why I get up in the morning because early on I decided I wanted to make some money teaching private lessons. So that to me, because I spend all my time, a lot of times by yourself practicing, trying to get better at your craft. And then I found that when I got offered a position teaching music, that brought it all home to me because then I could share it with other musicians and young people who are trying to learn how to play. So this made it feel like I was not only being kind of introspective, but I was going out there and helping others learn how to play. And it became more of a giving kind of situation for me. So that made me feel even more motivated as to the importance of music. So, and as I go on, especially at the pandemic, as we talked about, I feel how it's so important more than ever for me personally as a musician, a teacher, and just generally as a person.
Yeah.
So I'm very motivated, but for all of those reasons.
So, what have you learned from the legends and luminaries in this art form we call jazz that you in turn have taken and you teach younger players you get around?
Yeah, so the luminaries, I'm assuming you mean those, professional musicians that
Yeah,
I admire and so forth. Yeah. So I think basically what I take from that is that what, especially with jazz for me, it became a style of music where you could not only learn how to play the melody, but then during those periods of times where you can do a solo and improvise, you can create your own sound, which I feel that I have done, create your own unique sound. So what I do, like, say, for instance, I would listen to Stanley Turrentine. Whenever he came on the radio, I knew exactly who that was because he had that style.
yeah,
Then there was Dexter Gordon. Whenever I heard him play, I knew that was Dexter Gordon. So I could see I was drawn towards the music because of its improvisational character and the self-expression. And so that just motivated me even more, especially with those two I mentioned, and of course John Coltrane, Yusef Lateef, Stan Getz on the saxophones, especially Herbie Mann. Those were some of the luminaries I was drawn towards. And, of course, jazz during the 50s and 60s and so forth had a reputation, of a connection with using drugs, and I think what I found out was some of those musicians went through all that and they realized that Charlie Parker even saying, don't do what I do, you know?
yeah,
So that was a message for me is to stay on a healthy path because the healthier you are physically, the better you have more energy to play. You're clear-headed. When I'm on stage, I want to be clear-headed
yeah,
because it's a challenging music.
yeah,
Harmonically, it's deep.
yeah, absolutely. So, why do you love this art form we call jazz?
Yeah, jazz, I was kind of attracted to from the very beginning because of this improvisational character. And it's something about when you hear a dominant seventh or E minor seven with a flat five, it's like, wow, what that does to my brain,
Yeah,
So I was just feeling like that was a style of music I was drawn toward just because I like the sound of it. Now, one of the very first groups I ever played with was I would take my flute out to this area of the campus on U of M called the Diagonal. And on Sundays, they would have conga drummers playing Afro-Cuban rhythms. And so I can remember having my flute. At that point, I couldn't read, but I could jam. I knew my scales. So I went up to them. It was sort of like I was hypnotized by the patterns and the music. And so I asked them if I could join them. Make a long story short, I started playing with them every Sunday, and they invited me into the dance classes at University of Michigan where they would play. And some of the students, interesting enough, was Madonna Ciccone. I got to play for her classes and hang out with her, and her boyfriend played in a band that I played in. So the whole, you know, I don't know, atmosphere of being a musician and the improvisational character, even like especially flute and drum. That's like the most basic kind of combination of instruments. So I like jazz too because it also incorporated those rhythms
yeah.
called Latin jazz, which I was drawn for immediately, and bossa nova, where you take those great rhythms and you put it together with jazz harmonics. To me, it's a marriage made in heaven. That's what I wanted to do. I heard it, I felt it.
So, at the end of the day, Paul, everyone has a perception of you family, friends, fans, students, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah, well, the way I look at myself presently is that, like I was saying before, I like to think of us as ambassadors of hope. I realize more and more how important it is what we do. So whenever I'm on stage, I'm totally on stage. You know what I mean? I want to put on my best show, so to speak, or sharing my music with the audience, reaching out to them, giving them a reason to be listening to this music and uplifting their spirit. So that's why I want to continue. That's how I see myself. And when my students come to me, I see they look up to me And so I don't take that lightly. So whatever I do with this student is I make sure that I do no harm, because I want to make sure I'm going to help you with your music, whatever you want to do. It's not about me, it's about you. And that's somewhat how I feel about the audience too. It's not so much about me, it's about you as well. It's like an exchange. So, like, I have some students that struggle with reading. So I find out ways to help them learn songs, even if they just want to use their ear.
Yeah.
Like some of my students, like my little piano players, sometimes, they'll go through the book and I say, okay, if I think they're open to it, I say, take that position. Now we're just going to jam, make up your own song. And some of them, they really are drawn towards that. So I do see it myself as an ambassador in that way, and someone who, is a role model somewhat, of course.
So Live at the Blue Llama is the brand new release. It's a wonderful album. If anybody wants to pick it up in the best possible way to benefit you, catch you live, any of the good business in your world, where they go.
Yeah, they just have to go to paulvornhagen.com.
Okay.
And that has everything they would need to know, and the new CD is up on, which looks like this. I love this picture on the back. This is the quartet.
Yeah.
Photos taken by Jeff Dunn. And so they can go to paulvornhagen.com. They can easily go to Spotify, and they can just go to paulvornhagen.bandcamp.com.
Okay.
So all those are the three major ways to check it out.
Excellent. I'll put all that in the show notes. Paul, this has been such a pleasure and a joy. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with the album.
Yeah, Joe, and thank you for inviting me on your program. I love your background there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm a visual artist, so that's one of the originals.
Yeah, beautiful.
Hello, friends. Joe Domino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Domino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedomino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.